Hello, and welcome to How to Generate Meaningfully Unique Ideas as part of the Manitoba Open Innovation Challenge. My name is Rhonda Honke, and I'm going to be your facilitator today. The objectives of our webinar today are to provide you with an overview of the challenge in front of us and to share with you some tools and techniques for generating out-of-the-box innovative ideas. So we realize that some of you may not be able to join us for our ideation session scheduled for December 1st, but we still wanted to provide you with maybe some tips and some tricks to help you go beyond thinking of just minor tweaks to existing tools, resources, and programs, and to really shoot for the moon, come up with ideas that are really meaningfully unique. So the challenge that's in front of us is, how do we improve early childhood literacy and numeracy in Manitoba? So we're looking for innovative ideas for improving school readiness before age 5. So if we look a little more in depth at our challenge, we're inviting you to provide innovative ideas for ensuring all children have a good start in life by focusing on early literacy and numeracy. According to the Organization of Economic Cooperation and Development, Manitoba students lag behind their Canadian peers in numeracy and literacy at age 15, ranking 8th and 9th out of 10 provinces respectively. Research shows this starts very early. Manitoba data also show that up to 77% of kindergartners are not ready for grade 1 literacy and numeracy curricula. Research on child development indicates that intervening early, before children enter school, provides the biggest return on investment. So how do skills develop? Long before they enter school, through their first 5 years of life, children develop early literacy and numeracy skills at home and in their community. Exposure to words and books greatly varies, and some children are exposed to many more words than others. By 3 years old, this gap can be as much as 30 million words. Researchers confirm that preschool experiences provide a strong foundation for the positive attitudes and early literacy and numeracy competencies that are vital for the way children learn in school and in life. Strong early foundations in literacy and numeracy begin in the home and are further enriched through participation in high-quality early childhood settings and experiences. Early numeracy and literacy and oral language itself all develop through social interaction with caring adults and through play. Unfortunately, many children who struggle with literacy and numeracy in the early years continue to struggle throughout their school career. In addition to the emotional toll they experience in school, these children are disadvantaged when they graduate, start college or university, find a job, or make other life choices. In Manitoba, we want to be the most improved in literacy and numeracy in Canada by 2020. Better yet, we want to hold the spot by a landslide margin and be an example of what others can do to improve literacy and numeracy in their own provinces and territories. We need to do better setting our children up for success, and we need your help. So again, our mission is to come up with innovative ideas for improving school readiness before age 5. But there's some things we need to consider when we're looking for ideas. We need ideas that have a budget of $50,000 or less to implement on a small scale and can be implemented immediately and get results quickly. Those ideas shouldn't require a significant number of staff to implement and should be scalable across the province. We're not interested in ideas that require significant staff or organizational changes to existing programs, encourage individual or isolated activities by children, rely on significant financial resources to implement or manage, and are not inclusive or available to all Manitobans. So some areas we'd like to hear ideas from include interactive solutions with parents and children that families can get excited about, access to personalized services with at-home solutions or through publicly available resources like libraries, community resource centers, early learning and childcare programs, and public health organizations. The use of technology and social media to encourage participation and engagement with all Manitobans. Children with additional support needs or learning challenges, Indigenous children, newcomer children, and those living in rural, northern, and remote communities, including First Nations. And we're looking to explore ideas that are play-based. So I know that's a lot to manage, and it feels like a lot. So you may be sitting there saying, hey, I'd love to help, but I have no idea on how to come up with an idea. Well, if you need help, as little Michelle would say, you got it, dude. We're here to help you. So when we look at developing innovative ideas, there's a few tools that we apply. We look for stimulus, and for us, stimulus is any idea, image, picture, quote, anything that is going to cause us to look at a situation through a different lens or a different perspective. We also try to leverage diversity. So I would encourage you to perhaps look at working in a team and maybe get a few of you together to brainstorm around this. And in the case of this webinar, you can certainly watch it in a group and pause it and stop it and start it as you go through, so that as we're looking at different activities, you can actually stop the webinar, work through an activity, and then pick it up again. We also know that innovative ideas are simply feats of association, but we tend to naturally associate things that go together. What we're not really great at is looking for associations across things like different industries, different countries. So we look to try and force that a little bit in our techniques. We leverage a number of different tools, and we'll expose you to a couple of them that you could try on your own. And we really focus on speed. And the reason that we push people to work through these activities quickly is because we have a natural tendency to censor ourselves. We come up with a great idea, or we come up with an idea, and we quickly talk ourselves into how it's a dumb idea, and we walk away. Well, by forcing us to work quickly, we don't have time to censor ourselves. And so we can look at each idea, quickly jot it down, move on, and then come back and evaluate it later. So how we're going to work to generate ideas is to work you through a few different activities. One is called a mind dump. Then we're going to fill your brain with stimulus using something called a spark deck, apply a tool called mind mapping, another one called takeover time, and a last one called analogy 1. So what you'll notice is as I walk you through these activities, I will show you what it is, I'll explain to you how it works, I'll give you an example, and then if you'd like, you can hit pause on the webinar, work through the activity, and continue going on. If you'd rather just walk through the whole webinar and come back and do those activities later, if one or two tweak some interest for you, that's great too. It's completely up to you how you choose to walk through. But with that, why don't we kind of get started? The first activity that we often do with groups is something called mind dump. Now, when we look at a problem or an issue or a challenge like the one we've been presented, what we need to do is take any ideas we already have in our brain, whether they're whole ideas, partial ideas, and get them out on a page so that we can free up our mind space to look at something new. So in the mind dump activity, what we're asking you to do is take any ideas you already have to solve that challenge of improving literacy and numeracy for children prior to school age, and jot them down in the rectangular boxes, okay? So an example here, I might have an idea called, upon kindergarten registration in March, parents and children attend monthly workshops to assess and improve skills and provide remedial work ahead of September school start. So I might only have that idea, I might have a couple of more, but I would fill those ideas in. Once you've got your page filled with ideas, what would be great is for you to take those ideas and go share them with somebody else and allow them to build on your idea. So I might explain my idea of kindergarten registration and having these monthly workshops, and then somebody might say, well, hey, what if you also had online resources? Could those be part of existing structured playgroups that are out there? Could we host a PD session or professional development session for daycare centers so that they can also participate and support parents and children in their learning? So in those ovals is where you can add any feedback that people give you on your ideas. So again, I warned you that time's going to be of the essence and we're looking for speed. So I'm going to suggest you set a timer for 10 minutes. So take 10 minutes, jot down your ideas, talk to some other folks, and get some builds. So if you'd like to do that activity right now, feel free to press pause. If not, we're going to move on to the next one. So if you've worked through Mind Dump, you've had an opportunity to put down any existing ideas. So what we want to do now is put those aside because you've already got them jotted down. And what we're going to do is give you an opportunity to look at this problem with a different lens using what's called a Spark Deck. So in a Spark Deck, we have slides that have divergent and disruptive visuals and questions to force you to look at a problem or an opportunity from a different perspective. It's going to be challenging, I will warn you, but it is helpful, particularly if you go through it with a group. What we're going to present to you are perspectives or kind of views that might challenge what you believe to be true. And in some cases, you might look at some of the sparks we provide and think, this has absolutely nothing to do with numeracy and literacy. You're right, it doesn't. But there are ways that you can make connections between what we're showing you and building numeracy and literacy. And that's really what we want to encourage you to explore. So how do we use the Spark Deck? Well, it's pretty simple, actually. I'm going to walk you through the series of slides that are going to show you an image or a picture or a quote, and I'm going to ask you 3 questions to consider along with that image. And I'm going to just simply walk you through those slides. What I'm asking you to do is just to make some notes along the way. So if there's an image or a picture or a question that causes you to go, and you think of a word or you think of a phrase or you think of part of an idea, just make some notes. And once we're done, I'll explain to you how you can map that and help use that map to spark some ideas. Fair enough? Okay, here we go. So grab a piece of paper, a blank piece of paper, and get ready to jot down some notes because here we go through a Spark Deck. So Tumble Books. So Tumble Books is a collection with 1,100 titles, and it's perfect for public libraries and elementary schools with content that's appropriate for those grades K to 6. It includes animated talking picture books, chapter books, videos, nonfiction titles, playlists, and books in languages other than English, such as French and Spanish, graphic novels, and math stories. So anyone can log in for free at home or in a public library where they can read independently or follow along with the audio. If you have certain selected TV platforms like MTS5 TV as an example, you can actually find a Tumble Book channel where your children can actually watch and listen to the book. So how could we help children interact with words independently or with little support? And how could we change the way children interact with computers or other devices? So if anything in here sparks an idea for you or a thought, just jot it down. And if it doesn't, that's okay. Maybe the next spark will help you. So what's missing? This is an actual quote from a father with twin boys. Not the father in the picture, but a legitimate father. And he says, "My boys really struggled with kindergarten. They just weren't ready, but as first-time parents, we didn't realize we should be working with them on certain things. We actually had to change schools and fight to keep our kids in kindergarten for a second year. I wish we would have known what they had to be able to do before school started." How can we help parents and caregivers know what their children need to learn pre-kindergarten? How can we make it easy for someone to assess readiness? And how can we engage trusted sources, like pediatricians as an example, to help identify gaps? So again, if anything jumps out at you, write it down. So here's some information on early education in Finland. So Finland's youngsters are in charge of determining what happens in the classroom. Because kindergarten is focused on play, children learn to read in grade 1. If a child is willing and interested in learning how to read before that time, the teacher will help them learn, but only if that interest is shown. So how could we add more play into our children's learning at home? How could we expose our kids to more words and numbers while we're playing? And how could we keep our children interested in new topics so they learn faster? So let's look at learning as a system. So if we think of cell phone towers, they and satellites limit transition or transmissions. So improving cell phone components will not improve cell coverage if the towers and satellites are at capacity. So if we can't evolve past the weakest link in a system, like in this case, the towers and the satellites, what is the weakest link in preschool education? What is needed to strengthen that link? And where do we need to catch up to the strength of components in the system that are strong? So if you think of learning as a system, where is it weak in preschool? Cubetto, a wooden playset, is specifically designed to teach children ages 3 to 7 the basics of programming without the need for literacy or screen devices. This innovative toy teaches toddlers to code before they can read and write. The toy is ready to use out of the box, and children can play while learning the basics of programming without needing a computer screen to do it. How could we use toys to improve literacy and numeracy in a fun way? How could we help expose children to more stimulus without digital screens? And how can we teach children without them even knowing it? So if you haven't heard of Khan Academy is an educational website that aims to let anyone learn just about anything for free. So students or anyone interested can log in and watch 2,400 videos in which the site's founder discusses principles of math, science, and economics with some social science topics thrown in. So how could we help parents focus on different needs of each of their children? Because with the Khan Academy, you have the ability to create personalized study plans. How can we help parents without the money for tech resources access online tools for free? And how could we provide tools for toddlers to learn at their own pace? So this is an actual picture I took on my honeymoon, believe it or not. Who would have thought? In Thailand, space is at a premium. Traditional markets are cash-based and move from location to location in Bangkok throughout the week. So this is a picture of a mobile ATM that travels with the markets, so it's at the end of the street, to provide clients access to baht, which is their form of money, when and where they need it. So what if we could meet parents and caregivers where they need help? How could we be everywhere? And what if we could provide a resource or service that others felt was impossible? The 30 Million Words Initiative has made an impact on literacy rates among participating low-income families in Chicago. It's an innovative parent-directed program designed to harness the power of parent language to build a child's brain and impact his or her future. So it's currently being expanded to include center-based approaches, starting with daycares. The inclusion of providers coupled with parent involvement will allow for truly wraparound enrichment of children's early language environments. So how could we get teaching materials into the hands of all parents? And how can we integrate the efforts of parents, caregivers, and educators to improve results? And how could we expand our reach with community partnerships? So I know this slide looks a little crazy. And yes, it's an example of a patent for an instructional system and method for improving communication skills. This is actually designed for people who are hearing impaired to assess their communication skills using a multisensory approach. And from the multisensory approach to assessment, it designs a personalized learning plan for those particular learners. How could we approach assessment using different methods for preschoolers? How can we help parents and children create individualized learning plans? And how can we engage more senses in developing literacy and numeracy? So, dramatic play can enhance learning. It's a time when they break through the walls of reality, pretend to be someone or something different from themselves, and dramatize situations and actions to go along with the roles they have chosen to play. At our house, Puppy is the role playing game of the day. So, role play remains an integral part of the developmental learning process by allowing children to develop skills in such areas as abstract thinking, literacy, math, and social studies in a timely, natural manner. How could we teach parents the importance of role playing with kids? How could we provide materials to families to encourage role playing? How could we help families access new role playing ideas to try with their kids? Crawling the web. So, web crawlers are bots that use parameters to search the internet and compile results so users don't have to spend as much time searching independent sites. So, examples of these kinds of web crawlers or bots would be Expedia.ca and Travelocity. How can we make it simple to access existing programs and resources? And how can we reward parents or caregivers for supporting literacy and numeracy development? Here's an example of the Level Field School in India. The biggest difference in this school is the teaching method used in the classrooms. The classes are much richer than traditional lecture format. To make topics come alive, they use selected movie clips, documentaries, and literature. And to better develop useful life skills, they integrate debates, discussion, and role plays into the curriculum. How could we encourage toddlers to start critical thinking at an earlier age? How could we help parents teach at home with movie clips, documentaries, and literature? How could we help all children receive a richer than traditional home learning experience? So let's talk about community based learning. Here we can see examples of a piano staircase in a subway. We've got Pokemon Go, which I know last summer was quite the big hit. And you've got these two lovely boys sitting outside their treehouse. So, how can we make learning a fun family activity for all ages? How can we turn the community into a classroom? And how can we use boredom to promote learning through exploration? Reading the right way. Parents often make the mistake of rushing through the pages of a book because they're tired and trying to get their child to bed. Instead, read to him or her throughout the day when you're not rushed. Talk about what you're seeing in the pictures. Say, look at that little boy. Does he look happy or sad? Even asking her what sounds the animals in the pictures make gets them practicing their speech skills. How could we help teach parents about the little things that matter? How could we know when the child is most receptive to different activities? And how can we enable parents to ask for help when they aren't sure what activities they could be doing to teach their child? Ha, bear with me on this one. So, this photographer recently captured a profound partnership between a she wolf and a brown bear in the wilds of northern Finland. For days, he witnessed the strange pair meet every evening to share food after a hard day of hunting. No one knows when or how this relationship was formed, but it is certain that by now each of them needs the other. What unlikely partnerships can we create to have a positive impact on literacy and numeracy? How can we incent parents, caregivers, and educators to get involved? And how can we find sponsors to assist with in kind support? So that takes us to the end of our Spark Deck. And I'm hoping that in looking at some of those images and in looking at some of those questions, it sparked a few things for you. Maybe an idea or two, or part of an idea, or at least got you thinking about some things that maybe you weren't thinking about before. If you found that a little bit stressful because it's kind of out there, some of those sparks, that's okay. No problem. We've got more ways that we can generate ideas too. So what we do now is we take those sparks or those little bits and tidbits that you have and we try to organize them a little bit. And we do that using a tool called mind mapping. So if you want to grab a piece of paper, a blank piece of paper, put a circle in the middle and put in there, just like you see in the box on the screen, we need innovative ideas for improving school readiness before age 5. We start to create branches. So we'll create a branch called activities and games. We'll create a branch called programs. And we'll create a branch called social media and technology. Then I'm going to give you a branch that's really out there, things that are green. Bear with me. I know at times through this process, I'm going to sound like I'm a little bit crazy, but there's method to my madness here. Okay. What I'm going to ask you to do is take all those sparks or those little bits and nuggets and things that you jotted down and branch them off of activities, games, programs, and social media and technology. So group them essentially. So under activities and games, as an example, I might have looked at some of those sparks and I thought, when I think of games, I think of winning and losing, right? And I saw some of those activities and they looked like they were a little bit physical. When I think of games, I think of levels and of them being challenging. I might think of board games. I might think they're kind of a little bit frantic. Maybe cards might be something that we could do something with. But we got to make it fun and we got to do something that involves their friends to make it a bit social too. So those might be some things that I thought of or jotted down. When I think about programs, I might have thought about, they were talking about ways to kind of involve community and stuff. Well, where I live, we have a Kinderlinks program. They talked about different caregivers. Well, that might make me think of daycares or schools. There was some talk there around devices and technology. So maybe I might be thinking about computer programs, that there might be something we could do. Might have got me thinking about, well, how do people access programs today? It might make me think about different social programs that exist, clubs that are out there that perhaps we could partner with, and even different sports programs. Under the social media and technology side of things, I might have been thinking about, well, how can we leverage and use more online learning? What can we do with things like Facebook or Snapchat or Instagram to help? But that the downside of this is, there's always that risk of exposure to predators if we're dealing with social media and technology. What kind of devices could people access those things on? Would they be iPads, smartphones? And then what is the cost associated with that? And can people afford those kinds of things? So once you put all your sparks against those 3, that's great. Well, now you've got this crazy one out here saying things that are green. All I want you to do is simply think of and jot down things that are green, right? Vegetables, grass, Kermit the Frog, pea soup, crayons, shamrocks, screens, TV or trees, envy, whatever you think of that's green, just throw it on there. Does it relate to literacy and numeracy? Absolutely not. And that's okay. Because what I'm going to ask you to do next is simply circle things that jump out at you. So words, phrases, concepts, whatever you wrote down there, things that jump out at you. And from there, look at how you might pull those together into some kind of an idea. So when I look at the ones I've circled here, clubs, accessibility, friends, levels, Kermit the Frog, I might think about, maybe there's a way for us to get involved with 4-H clubs where people have friendships already and people, rurally would have access to some kind of like a puppet show kind of thing. When I think of Kermit the Frog, I think of puppets that kids love, and maybe we can have different levels of those puppet shows for different ages, some that are focused more on literacy, some that are focused more on numeracy. Okay, so that's how we use mind mapping. So what I would encourage you to do is, if you feel like it, hit pause, work on your own or with a small group to kind of work through this process of mind mapping. Circle ideas and phrases that jump out at you and see what kind of ideas you can map or come up with from that. All right, so give yourself no more than 15 minutes to work through this activity. Again, we want speed. We want to move quickly so you're not censoring yourself. We'll go through all the ideas that you generate at the end, so don't worry about that for now. All right, so have fun with some mind mapping. The next tool we want to take a look at to help you generate ideas is a tool we use called Takeover Time. So what we do is we assume that certain companies are going to jump in and take control of helping to educate preschoolers when it comes to literacy and numeracy and developing those skills. So what we're going to do is take these 3 organizations, Google, McDonald's, and Spartan Race, and we are going to use the mind mapping technique to capture what we think of when we think of those companies or organizations. The second thing we're going to capture on that mind map is, what do we know them for? And then again, use that mind mapping technique of selecting a few key things that jump out, looking at how we can apply those key elements to our challenge of early childhood literacy and numeracy. Now, this is where you go, Rhonda, what the heck are you talking about? Don't panic. I have an example. So I've picked Spartan Race. So when I think of Spartan Race, I think of an obstacle course. I think of extreme because they're always in the muck and the mud and kind of climbing and crawling. A lot of people do some intense training before a Spartan race, and it's almost military style. Spartan races, I would say, are pretty targeted. Your average Joe isn't somebody that quickly jumps on board to sign up for these things. Usually there's a core group of, I'll say, extreme racers that generally love to participate in these events. I always think about them being dirty because people are always crawling in the mud. And sometimes they're team-based, so you can actually sign up as an individual or you can sign up in a team. And they're international, so you can actually do a Spartan race in Dubai just as quickly as you could do one in Manitoba. And through that international group and this team-based concept, it's kind of almost become a bit of a community. So I think of that when I think of Spartan races. And I also think of the personal challenge, because people that I've talked to that have been part of that, that's a big part of it, is they want to see if they can actually finish and get that sense of accomplishment at the end. And with that, it's all about them pushing their limits. They want to see what they can do. So there, in a couple of minutes, we've done a bit of a mind map around Spartan Race. We haven't related it at all to literacy, and that's the key. We're not trying to use these companies at this point to solve the problem. All we're doing with the mind map is identifying what we think of when we think of this organization. So I've got all this together. Now I'm going to highlight what are some keywords or things that jumped out at me. So I selected targeted, community, pushing limits, and sense of accomplishment. Okay. So then what can I do with those keywords? What are some ideas now if I want to apply this to literacy and numeracy? Right? So what are some things that I can do to help with that? So can I get groups of children together? And can I actually do that perhaps either by age to target, or perhaps I get newcomers together, or perhaps it's Indigenous communities, things like that, where I've targeted a group and I can create targeted resources accordingly that work within a community. So maybe it's an event that we host where we bring together a variety of people. So it's not just parents and kids, it's caregivers, it's grandmas, grandpas, aunts, uncles, daycare providers, and we actually do it as a bit of a game where we're going to push limits and we're going to kind of test what kids can do in a fun kind of a game sort of a way, where we can do this over a period of maybe every month, where they come back and they run through these activities and see how they're getting better at things, so that they have a sense of accomplishment at the end. And they can say, hey, last time I only got this far, this time I got that far. Next time I'm going to get to that point, so that it becomes a bit of them pushing themselves and they get a sense of accomplishment out of it. So there's an example. Okay. So what I'd like you to do now is take a few minutes. I'm just going to back up here. And for each of these organizations, and perhaps if you want to use my mind map for Spartan Race, go right ahead. But take about 10 minutes per organization. So 10 minutes for Google, 10 minutes for McDonald's, and go through that exact same mind mapping technique. When you think of McDonald's, what do you think of? Right? Jot those down on your mind map and then circle the keywords or things that jump out at you. Do the same thing when you think about Google. See if by grouping some of those things together and highlighting some of those keywords, if that doesn't help you think of the literacy and numeracy, challenge in a different way. So again, if you want to pause and work through that activity, feel free, because we've only got one more left. So our last activity is one that we call Analogy 1. And so here, what we're looking to do is find one element of our challenge that another industry or another group has had to deal with and has dealt with successfully, so that we can analyze what did they do and how can we apply it to our challenge. So what I'd like you to do is take a piece of paper, draw 4 boxes on it, just like you see on the screen in front of you. So the first box we're going to fill in is, what is the contributing issue, or what is the challenge that's creating our conflict? Now, in the case of literacy and numeracy, there are going to be many contributing issues. Pick one. Okay, or if you want to go through this activity a few times and use different contributing issues, that's okay. You can do that too. So once you have a contributing issue, we're going to ask you to think of an analogy from nature or another industry that has had the same problem. Then we're going to ask you to look at how they solved that problem, and then apply that solution to see if we can come up with an idea to address ours. So here's again where you say, huh? No problem. I have an example. So a contributing issue might be that parents feel overwhelmed. There are so many online tools, programs, and resources, they don't know where to start, despite wanting to do the right thing for their child. So when I think of an analogy, or where others would deal with that same problem, it made me think of, well, when loved ones receive a cancer diagnosis, caregivers often feel overwhelmed and don't know how to help or where to access resources. So it's not literacy and numeracy based, but it's another example of where people might feel overwhelmed by the amount of resources available and just don't know how and where to get access to them. So how does cancer care, in this case, resolve that issue? Well, Cancer Care Manitoba has a patient support services department that assigns a patient representative to families to help them understand their next steps and navigate the process and resources. Okay, so in this case, they've actually assigned a representative to a family that walks them through, helps them understand, provides them with access to resources that are relevant to them. So how can we take that kind of a model or a response and apply it to now our issue and challenge of parents feeling overwhelmed about the resources available to support their child. And, if we apply that solution, well, perhaps we leverage the relationships that develop between public health nurses and new parents to help them understand the process of literacy and numeracy development from birth while offering proven resources for support. So we're not creating something new, but we're taking this new relationship that happens at birth when a child comes home from the hospital, and that trusted resource now as a public health nurse is starting to educate parents and help them navigate through and provide them with some initial resources. Okay, so again, what we're trying to do is look at what's a contributing issue to our challenge, thinking about who else has had a similar challenge, how they've resolved that, and taking that model and applying it back. Okay, so again, if you'd like to, take a few minutes, see if you can't work through this on your own or in your small group. So great, we've got all these ideas now, we've checked them off. Now what do we do with it? Well, depending on how you've worked through this process or what ideas you may have already brought up, you might have a stack of ideas. Maybe you have 3, maybe you have 5, maybe you have 20. That's great. What we'd like you to do now is select one. Go through the list of ideas you have, pick one that you think has the most promise or that you're most passionate about. Once you've done that, the first thing we need to do is check your alignment. So take that idea and run it against the slide. So if you'll recall, we looked at this earlier where we talked about we need ideas that meet this criteria. We're not interested in ideas that meet those criteria. And we're looking to explore these kinds of ideas. So check to see if your idea aligns with everything on the screen. That's your first place to start. If it does, great. If it doesn't, you may want to go back and go through your list of ideas again and see if there's one that meets better with the challenge. So assuming now that you've got an idea and we've checkmarked this slide, it aligns well with the challenge, I would like to suggest that here's another group of questions that might help you think deeper about your idea. So it's not absolutely necessary, but sometimes it's really good to take that idea and ask some critical questions to help you really explore it. So the real problem we're addressing with this idea is what? The 3 things that this idea will do better than other existing ideas are what? Parents, educators, government, and children will see this as great value because the occasion, situation, location, or type of parent, child, educator, care provider this innovation would be most valuable to is who? What is the most important element of our idea and what is most exciting about it? The next generation improvement or build on this idea would be the biggest difference we'll notice versus options available to address our challenge today will be, and after someone has applied our innovation, they will most likely boast to others about what? And the most significant challenges we'll need to overcome to make this idea a reality are what? Okay. So use these prompts, and not all of them will apply, but use some of them to think really deep about your idea so that you can really get to the crux of it. Once you do have your idea and you're feeling really good about it, well, your next step is to submit it. So submission forms can be found at www.wearethesolution.ca. And deadline for submissions is January 11th of 2018 at 4 p.m. Central Standard Time. Okay. So that really takes us to the end of our webinar on idea generation. I want to thank you for joining me today, and I really want to thank you for engaging in this Open Innovation Challenge, because without people willing to participate, we're not going to find new solutions to this challenge. And as a mom with 2 toddlers at home, and as a teacher myself, this one is near and dear to my heart. So I really want to thank you for joining me today, and thank you for participating in the challenge. I look forward to seeing what some of the ideas are that come forward. So good luck, and hopefully we'll see your idea soon.